aggregate market cap of all Iraqi equities relative to the GDP of the country is like 5%. Markets are complex and difficult to predict. And given that, you really want to sort of narrow your focus. Compounding is an unbelievable thing if you can just let it happen over many years. And I think that there are companies that have shown their resiliency and have demonstrated their ability to operate in situations that would be unthinkable for companies in the United States.
مرحبا، أهلا بكم للحلقة الثالثة من تجارب أسهم. ويانا اليوم ستة مارة. أهلا وسهلا، شلون الصحة؟ اليوم حلقة مميزة شوية، راح نستضيف بيها أجنبي، شخص أمريكي اسمه ويل ماكهيل. ويل هو مستثمر بسوق العراق للأوراق المالية، مستثمر بمختلف الأسهم من تقريبا 2020. تمام. كلش استمتعنا صراحة بحوارنا وياه. طلب منه كونه مستثمر أمريكي أصلا عندهم تشريعات مالية هيك شيء أنه نضيف ديسكليمر، فأنا راح أحكي بالعربي، راح أحكي كلش بسرعة حتى نمر منه. سيظهر ويل ماكهيل في البودكاست بصفته الشخصية وليس كموظف في شركة إنغالز أند سنايدر، لذلك فإن الآراء الواردة في هذا البودكاست تعبر عن رأي السيد ويل ماكهيل فقط، ولا تعكس موقف أو آراء شركة إنغالز أند سنايدر. أي آراء واردة في هذا البودكاست هي آراء حالية فقط، وبينما يعتقد أن المعلومات الواردة موثوقة لا يوجد أي ضمان لدقتها أو اكتمالها، ولا ينبغي الاعتماد عليها. على هذا الأساس الاستثمار ينطوي على مخاطر بما في ذلك خسارة رأس المال، ولا يمكن ضمان تحقيق هدف استثماري محدد. هذا الديسكليمر راح لازم نقوله. همينا ما راح نتطرق بالحلقة، أو على الأقل ما راح يتطرق بالحلقة إلى الأسماء الصريحة للشركات المدرجة. راح يستعمل أسماء يوصفها، مثلا شركة بغداد للمشروبات الغازية راح يسميها شركة بيبسي بوتلينج كومباني. تمام. اللقاء همينا راح يكون بالإنجليزي، راح تتوفر ترجمة إلى حتى الكل يقدر أنه يطلع على شنو نحكي الضيف، شنو الأسئلة تنطرح، وشنو الأجوبة همينا اللي راح يشاركنا بيها. نترككم هسه مبدئيا ويا اللقاء ونرجع لكم ورا دقائق.
شوفكم بعد شوية.
Hi Will.
Hey, how are you guys?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well. I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Tamara. Tamara
Hello,
Hussein.
Tamara. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Tamara is our co-host of تجارب Stocks. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her already or not.
I think that we connected on LinkedIn, so I've seen some of your work on online. So yeah, very nice to meet you, and yeah, thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
It's certainly our pleasure. Thank you very much for being on with us. I think this will be very fun. This will be very useful and informative for us as well. I think we spoke last time 5-6 months ago, also in times of conflict, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. It never ends, right? It never changes. You just have to be accustomed to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are in the thick of it, but it seems like there's never really a dull day in the Middle East. It's just sort of always something's going on.
There isn't. There really isn't. And that's, to young people like us, it's entertaining. It's fun. You always get something exciting to be worried about.
Sure.
But not sure if that's really the case for investors. I think we'll talk about that today. I'm really curious, so that we just get started, right off the bat. How did you learn about Iraqi stocks? So if we have a bit of your background, what you do, what your, I'm sure, rich experiences working in finance, working in consulting, multiple sectors. How does someone like this get exposed to Iraqi stocks, to Iraq in general as a country? Really curious and excited about that.
Yeah, so good question. So I, in my professional life, work as a portfolio manager at an investment firm in New York City, and I focus primarily on developed market equities. So, do a lot in the United States, a lot in Europe, some in Australia. But I'd say that I have definitely a bit of a contrarian bent to my investment style, and really looking for underappreciated businesses or markets or assets that are kind of mispriced relative to what their future potential is going to be. So that's kind of my sort of theoretical underpinning of my investment strategy. So I want to say probably 7 or 8 years ago, I listened to a podcast that's fairly popular here in the United States in the investment world called Invest Like the Best with a guy named Patrick O'Shaughnessy. And he had on a guy named Jeffrey Batt, who runs a firm called the Euphrates Fund. Yeah. And so I remember I was just listening to this this podcast on the way to work one day and was like, and he talked about kind of how he initially got started investing in Iraq, and he gave some background on kind of the market and talked a little bit about the potential opportunity there. And I was sort of fascinated because it just seemed like it was like the ultimate contrarian play, where it's like in the United States, the sort of general perception of Iraq is just they've got no idea really what's going on there. They just sort of view it as a place where we had conflict in the past, and it's been sort of years and years of conflict, and
boom. Yeah.
It's no one would ever even think about investing in the country for the most part. So I heard that podcast, and I didn't do anything at the time. But it was
which year this podcast?
It definitely stuck with me. Fast forward
when
to
was
2020.
It? Sorry, so Tamar was asking.
Which year? Which year? When was that podcast?
So this was in 2018, I want to say, 2017, okay. 2018. So it was before COVID. Yeah. And then, so during COVID, I had a little bit more free time on my hands, just given everything was sort of shut down and my social life grinded to a halt, and I was working from home, and I was just sort of revisiting interesting things that I thought about in the past. And I sort of picked back up this thread of looking at the Iraqi stock market. And I started to do a little bit of like initial due diligence into it, and just sort of reconfirmed all the positive macro data points that Jeff had mentioned on the podcast initially. Can we talk about that a bit, actually? Yes, I'd be happy to. So like, I think that from like a super high level, like Iraq's like the 6th largest exporter of oil in the world. It's the 2nd largest in OPEC. It's got a fairly large population, like just under 50 million people. It's got a young population. I think the average age is like in the 30s or something like that. It's the currency which is really the number one thing that I worry about if I'm investing in foreign countries, is just sort of currency risk. But the fact that you have massive oil reserves and you're one of the largest oil exporters, like that is a pretty strong underpinning of the currency. So you're going to be more or less pegged to the dollar. And then from a market investing standpoint, the aggregate market cap of all Iraqi equities relative to the GDP of the country is like 5%, which compared to in the United States, it's like 170%, even compared to other emerging markets like India or Colombia. Like those are much more in the 40 to 50 to higher percentage. So 5% of the entire market cap relative to GDP suggested to me that it's still like very, very early innings for the kind of public equity space in Iraq. And even if you were to get, a doubling of that, it could be a, very significant opportunity.
This is a great point. Quite actually a surprising revelation to me, maybe to us, because we bring this up often within the show, that we don't have many listed companies in the market. It's a very small segment that's actually on there. And maybe we bring it up, with a negative connotation, obviously, that, hey, this market is underdeveloped. There's not much space to throw around liquidity, etc. But an investor like you telling us that, okay, maybe this is actually a positive thing, this is a good indicator for people looking at this market, is really interesting to hear.
It's I think that's well said, and it's the way that I kind of look at it is like, yes, the The market is relatively underdeveloped. Yes, trading liquidity is relatively low. Yes, there aren't that many publicly traded stocks, but I view that as more opportunity than I do as a negative factor. Like, especially given the other macro points that I mentioned earlier, like I don't see those things getting worse over the next 5 to 10 years. I see them getting better. And
there's only one way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
up.
I kind of approach it from I like to consider myself a value investor and think about where there's opportunity, where there's value, and seeing those sorts of things like, it's not going to take too much money coming into the country to, really increase the kind of aggregate market cap of the entire stock market.
Right.
Okay, well, can you give us an overview about your portfolio? In which sector you are focused?
Yeah, sure. So I started to look at like the individual stocks in the trade on the ISX, and it's sort of interesting to look at the individual securities, because what I really wanted to build was a portfolio that I could just kind of buy and hold and not have to worry about trading in and out of things.
You don't need to invest for speculation. It's only for the long term.
Right, long term, exactly. So that I could benefit from the long-term compounding of both the economy and of the individual equities. So things like the Pepsi bottling company in Iraq, which I think you guys are probably familiar with, that one immediately jumped out to me just in terms of its business quality. Like you look at the historical financials of this business, and it seems to grow its revenue like 10 to 15% every year. It grows its operating profit 15 to 20% every year. And what really stood out to me is like you look at the historical financials and you kind of contrast that to what you know about whether it's the geopolitical situation in Iraq or some of the conflicts that have happened, and you can't even see where that was happening on their financials. So they've continued to grow through every issue that Iraq has had. So that kind of is like the ultimate durable compounding cash story. If you can continue to grow your revenue when ISIS has taken over whatever, a third of the country, like that's the type of business that I'm really interested in.
Okay, what about banks?
Banks too. So banks generally I'd say is sort of the purest bet on an emerging market or a frontier market. Mm-hmm. So I looked at, I sort of took all the publicly traded banks in Iraq and I just graded them based on return on equity, loan growth, credit quality, just sort of the basic financial sector indicators. And I mean, there are some really good banks in Iraq. Like there's like really, really high quality return on equity. And you can compare this to stories that I've seen unfold in India or in other kind of emerging countries. Like the timeline for growth for these stories is not 2 or 3 years, it's 20 or 30 years. So like, I think that some of the, high quality banks in Iraq and Baghdad, like have, decades of potential growth opportunity ahead. So, it's definitely another exciting area of opportunity.
So, if I may intervene, I'm curious when you're looking at these stocks, when you're looking at these banks, and the bottling company, how are you really able to figure out, other than what appears obviously online and publicly, how these companies are doing on ground? I don't know if that's a big part of what you seek to do, but how do you gather this kind of data?
It's a good question. There is a little bit of a leap of faith that the numbers that I'm seeing from their financial statements accurately reflect the reality. And like it's mainly just sort of trusting that like, okay, if they are producing this amount of revenue growth every year and this amount of profit growth, that like they're doing something right. Like obviously they're well managed, they're adding capacity, building new facilities.
So you're not talking to
winning
Iraqis
new business. Like it's a little bit the sort of phrase that I like is like the proof is in the pudding to some degree. It's you don't see businesses that have that kind of return on capital and that kind of growth trajectory if they're being mismanaged or if they're not executing at a high level. So and you can read and gather other information sources. Like I believe the Pepsi bottling company in Iraq has something like 85% market share versus like Coca-Cola or other brands.
Yes, correct.
And I have sort of just a mental model of like, if you have a consumer products company that has that large of a market share, like they have a significant competitive advantage over the long term versus their peers. So it's really kind of piecing these different pieces of information together that helps me build conviction and build confidence in an investment thesis.
Okay, is it easy for you to get the information about any listed company?
It is, and that's actually another aspect of investing in Iraq that I was extremely impressed with. Is I trade through Rayby Securities, and like their research, their responsiveness to my inquiries, like it's as good as anything that I've dealt with in the United States. Like they are, I'm very impressed with their business, and they send research, they send models, they send notes. I can get financial information on anything, and it's so I'm absolutely happy with that.
Okay, how did you since when you start your investing? Since when?
I started in 2020.
Okay, how you evaluate your performance so far?
The performance has been very good, actually. Yeah, it's. I think the portfolio at an aggregate level is probably like 3 or 4x since 2020, which is, significantly better than the S&P 500 and significantly better than, basically any sort of global comparison.
So how much was it?
I wouldn't say that that's due to my genius necessarily, but I think that it's just sort of finding the right companies and finding an undervalued market and just sort of being patient and letting them do their thing.
Right. Yeah, she wants to discredit you and just say, it's the right timing, but I think it takes some, it also takes some brains to do it at the right time.
It definitely is, I definitely was fortunate in my timing of buying, certain things at certain times. Yeah. And I know that, I think that you have to be clear-eyed about the fact that markets like Iraq can have very large swings up and down, and maybe that 3 or 4x could turn back into a flat in the next 3 years. But I am still very pleased with the companies that I own, and they do generate fairly significant dividends relative to the amount that I paid, and I think that I view these as long-term holds for many years to come.
Right, that's amazing. That's excellent. And so, if I may hear it again, so how well was the performance? I'm so sorry, but I don't think I caught it. Did he say a percentage number of performance?
No,
you didn't. Okay.
No, he don't.
Can we actually do that?
I said just a multiple. So it's been about a three times multiple of what I initially invested.
A 3 times multiple. That's amazing.
Yes, I've tripled the money basically.
Tripled. That's excellent. That's very good. Very good. What has been the best and worst investment in your experience here in this market?
The best has been the banks that I've been involved with. Like they're
so the bank that holds the name of the city in which we are currently residing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that this was more of a, I just sort of was fortunate when I timed my investment in these things, and I just sort of bought them when they were cheap.
Right.
And there was a massive re-rating in the multiple of the bank, in addition to kind of continued earnings growth. Right. I think that the banks benefited a lot from being able to raise interest rates and dealing with the inflation. Their spreads increased. So that was a very fortunate situation.
Can you?
I don't even really know if
I.
I have had a worst one. Everything that I've invested in has done okay so
He's
far.
giving this market such a good rep. I'm telling you, it's not that good.
I should knock on wood. But I guess that's the other the other sort of approach that I've brought to this is that I've focused on like what I consider to be the highest quality businesses. Like I think that I'm already taking enough risk investing in Iraq. I don't need to go even further down the risk spectrum to invest in the riskiest companies there.
That's
like, I sort of feel like I'm taking enough risk as is.
Yeah, I think blue chips in Iraq, it's a good bet. Not really worth it to the other ones.
Yeah, and you want to be like, when I think about the market as a whole, like as the market gets bigger and as the economy grows, a lot of money is going to flow to the blue chips. Like that's just sort of the way that markets typically develop. And the absolute worst thing as an investor is if you get the market right, but you get the stocks wrong. So
that's
it's
true.
like you really want to protect against
that's very big. And also you brought this up. I think there's a good gap or alpha actually in this perception, especially foreign investors. So I don't know. This is not. I don't believe Tamara shares this opinion with me. I'm just thinking that many of the blue chips could be there. There is a case to be made that they are overpriced because of preferences of a lot of foreigners, of a lot of people who don't really want to think about where their money is going to put their investment into them. So a case could also be made for that. But I think local Iraqis could make use of it more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I look at for instance the earnings multiple of the bottling company, or I look at some of the price to book ratios of some of the banks in Iraq, and like they don't seem to be very overpriced to me. Like they still seem relatively attractive even at current levels, even after they've appreciated. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm still I'm not selling, I guess.
Good news.
And so there's no worst investment.
Yes.
Knock on wood, not yet. Yeah.
Okay, well, if we need to talk about the recent conflict and the geopolitical problem that's happened recently, what was your reaction during this time?
It sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier about kind of looking for companies that are able to operate and grow in any environment. I kind of call this the paradox of frontier market investing. On one hand, you have so many things to worry about. There's geopolitical risk, there's currency risk, there's oil price risk, there's Israel-Iran war risk. So given that, like, it almost simplifies what you're doing on the investment side, because you have to buy businesses that you should be prepared to own through a long period of time, and that you have confidence in their ability to operate in any kind of environment. And I think that there are companies that have shown their resiliency and have demonstrated their ability to operate in situations that would be unthinkable for companies in the United States. And I think that sort of like institutional operating knowledge has really made these like really strong companies that are going to exist for a long period of time. So I'm obviously cognizant of what's going on globally, and I hope there is a swift and acceptable resolution to the conflicts. But end of the day, like I'm not really that worried about the companies that I own. Like they've done it over periods of time, and they're sort of they embody this concept of being like anti-fragile, where they almost like become stronger the more turmoil that they have to deal with.
Okay, I just noticed that the last 3 sessions there is no transactions for foreign clients. So I think that they tend to be more conservative during this time. So they are no buying, no selling until things be more clear during this time. But today we
I think
saw
that's right. And
I
I really approach these types of investments as like, I'm not going to be day trading. I'm not going to be like trading in and out of things. Like, I really view this as like, I'm buying an ownership stake in an underlying business that I want to hold on to for, many years. Mm-hmm. And, I think you can get yourself into trouble by, trying to guess every move in the market or trade every single different news event. I mean, I even just looking at the most recent geopolitical news, like, I think that if you were to tell me over the weekend that the price of oil was going to be down on Monday after Iran's, firing missiles at Israel and the United States bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, like, you would never guess that oil would be down after that type of a situation. So I think that is just sort of emblematic that markets are complex and difficult to predict. And given that, you really want to sort of narrow your focus to the best you can to really like what the companies are doing and how they're growing and how they're executing.
Okay, so if we need to talk about how much it must be worth for the foreign client to exit, what's the exit threshold?
How bad does it have to be?
Good question. Yeah, I mean,
why are we putting him through this?
I don't know actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
I witnessed
it kind of goes
something
back
similar
to like
at 2014.
I mean, I guess if like Iran decided that they were going to invade Iraq and try to take over the entire country, like that would probably be a situation that I would consider selling the stocks. But short of that, I mean, even just using the example of when ISIS was spreading throughout the country, like these businesses were still doing fairly well. Like it's not like they just sort of ceased all operations.
I have to ask.
No, it's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. If we look at, so let's say, obviously you have your own experience also doing stocks in the US, if I'm not mistaken. So it's obviously a very complex question, but how do they compare? So both in terms of market dynamics and also tech, let's say features, things that are available in that market that aren't available here. Can we just quickly compare both markets?
Sure. Yeah, I think that there's many differences and many similarities. Like for instance, I come into work every day and I open up my FactSet or Bloomberg applications that have a million different functions that I can do to monitor my portfolio and to monitor the markets. And there's the sort of depth and liquidity of the markets in the United States are the best in the world. And, we have a trading desk here that operates, all throughout the day, executing orders. And I think that there's also if you think about the market participants in the United States, there's a very broad spectrum of participants, from people like me, from hedge funds, from large institutional asset managers to pension funds, to purely quantitative algorithmic funds, to, there's just a huge number of people that are buying and selling stocks for different reasons at different times. And so I think that in some cases that can actually lead to a lot of noise in price action, specifically, where like you could have a quantitative algorithmically driven trading shop that is buying and selling securities because there's some change in some data point that they track that you have no idea what it is, but now they're pushing some stock you own down 3% for no reason. Whereas I think that in Iraq that doesn't really exist to the same degree. Like it's people are buying stock because they think the company is going to do well and they think the stock is going to go up, or they're selling stock because they need the money for something, or they think the stock is going to go down. So I think that it's a little bit a little bit simpler to kind of like think about market action and kind of price action. Not to say that it's easier, but it's just sort of less, there's less things going on, which in some ways I actually find refreshing because it means that you can really focus on the underlying business. It's almost like operating on a private market where you're just going to go and buy a business from someone and then try to sell the business in 10 years versus, the United States. And, if you're trading the NASDAQ, like you got to worry about just like, Trump came out and said something about tariffs and now all of a sudden the entire market's down 10% or something. It's just sort of like this day-to-day insanity here in the United States.
Right, and I don't think we have lots of commercial traders. That's also a big thing. So everyone, there's these groups of people, there's these segments of people who are in the know, right? Who are really taking action in the market, which probably generally is a bad thing, right? Because there's not much market participation, but also is a good thing for someone who wants to invest professionally and wants lots of signal, very, very little noise. I think, and that's the case right now in the market.
And I think that there are this is true of every single market in the entire world, is that there are the main things that drive the price of stocks are fear and greed. And if you just kind of understand that, when stocks are selling off and people are fearful, if you can try to do your best to do the opposite of what the crowd is doing, and that's when you should be, it's the kind of the old Warren Buffett adage of be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy, is especially if you can have a longer time horizon, you can take advantages of those kind of periods of turmoil in the market and really kind of think of where is the stock going to be in 5 years, where is it going to be in 10 years.
Okay, well, from your perspective, what is the features or infrastructure that you find it missing in the ISX that would make the investing is much easier from your point of view?
I think that so there are two things that I would say. The first is that there are no custodians on the ISX. So the actual custody of the money happens at the exchange, which is very unusual for relative to other markets that operate around the world. For someone like myself that's just doing this kind of personally, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're a large institutional investor, would much prefer to see a custody service. Mm-hmm. The second thing that drives me crazy about the ISX is this rule that they have that foreigners are not allowed to buy more than 45% of the shares, which I think is it's so counterproductive in terms of advancing the market. The ISX should be trying their best to bring in foreign capital and to let foreign investors invest in the markets there. That's what will unleash things. So I hope that at some point they will see the errors of their ways on that.
Yeah, actually they are working, the ISC, the Iraqi Securities Commission, working on increase the ratio for the foreign clients to allow them to invest more in the listed companies. Hopefully that's happened soon.
I would like to see them get rid of that rule entirely. I just think that it's just for instance, consider an example. If I was a startup hedge fund that was focused on frontier markets and I raised $100 million that I needed to spend, allocate $20 million to Iraq. I couldn't even buy shares in some of the companies on the ISX now because I'm a foreign investor. It would make it then people just would skip Iraq entirely and they'd invest in other places instead. Exactly. So I think that changing that rule would be a very big positive for the market.
Hopefully.
Right. I don't know if we'd like to maybe. Have you ever had experiences doing Forex?
I have. I don't really trade actively on foreign exchanges. It's Forex. I mean, the reason that I don't is that I just have no idea what's going to happen. I feel like it's very hard for me to have an edge in those markets. There's so many variables and they're so complex and there's so many different things happening that influence the price of currencies that, like, I don't know, it's like, you know, you put your finger up in the air and see where the wind's blowing. Like, I've got no idea if you know, the dollar is going to weaken or if the Iraqi dinar is going to strengthen versus some other currency. It's just sort of like, you know, it's like flipping a coin basically for me. So
right. So there's this. So we to a degree have a bone to pick, okay, with forex companies in Iraq. We bring this up often, right? That there are lots of companies, lots of brokers, exchanges operating. You know, very. I don't want to say in a clandestine manner, but not completely legally, right? Very gray area there. So we just wanted to hear about your opinion and insight.
I mean, I think that we have those in the United States too, and I think that like they're much closer to going to a casino than they are to investing in the stock market. Is kind of the way that I would characterize it.
Right. This is a popular quip of Tamara's. She always says this, right? Like, doing forex is basically gambling, right?
Always get attacked because of my opinion.
I fully 100% agree that it's essentially gambling.
That's great.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more question. I'll leave it to you, obviously.
Okay. If you need to give an advice to any local or another foreign client, what will you advise?
My advice would be, to the best of your ability, try to just think long term. Like, the way to create wealth and the way to earn really strong returns in any market is to have a long-term orientation and to really focus on the ability of the individual companies that you're investing in to compound over long periods of time. Like, compounding is an unbelievable thing if you can just let it happen over many years. Try your best not to obsess over every single news item or every single data point. You know, I think that investors oftentimes get in their own way because they read some news story that freaks them out and they think it's going to have a negative impact on the market, or you know, they are scared because the price of their stocks go down and they panic sell and they sell everything at the bottom and then they never reinvest their money again. Like, I think that really focusing on kind of buying things that you have faith in that can grow earnings and can grow revenue, and then just letting them do their thing. Like, it's simple. It's not easy always, but I think that that's the best way, at least in my opinion, to invest.
Oh, this is a good one.
Agreed.
You need to highlight it.
Yes, it's simple, not easy. That's very true, actually. Thank you so much for being on with us, Will.
Thank you.
What a pleasure and a privilege. Really appreciate it and wish you all the best. Hoping you always...
Successful investment.
Right.
Yes, thank you guys. It was wonderful to catch up with you and look forward to speaking with you guys soon.
Hopefully. Any planned visits to Iraq?
Yeah, this is good. Good question.
Nothing planned, though.
Okay.
I would love to come to. I do need to come to Baghdad.
Maybe
once the current.
Obviously. That was your answer 6 months ago as well. And you're totally right. You're totally right for that. You know, it's always. Anyways, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. What a pleasure to have you. Inshallah, we do definitely see you in Baghdad sometime soon. We're not sure when, right? But definitely sometime soon. Really
wonderful. I'm going to hold you guys to that. I would love to meet you guys in person. So thanks so much.
Likewise. Have a good day, please. Thank you so much.
Great.
Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye. بس شنو رأيك في اللقاء؟
كلش حلو، كلش انفورماتيف. اتوقع هو شارك تجربته ايجابيه جدا كانت، لان خصوصا انه احنا ركزت انه على التايمينج، انه هو دخل بالفتره اللي صار بيها اللي حكيتها يمكن كل لقاءاتي الفتره اللي صار بيها بوست السوق، صار بيها ارتفاع كبير بعد كورونا. يمكن حسين بالحلقه اللي فاتت هو نفس الفتره اللي هو دخل بيها البورصه، فكانت يعني استغل الفتره بشكل صحيح، وبالتالي انعكست ايجابيا على اداء المحفظه مالته. وهذا الشيء زين. الفقرة الأخرى اللي لفتت انتباهي بكلامه إنه هو المشاكل أو الأشياء اللي الفيتشرز اللي نريد نحطها أو نضيفها للسوق الأوراق المالية حتى تكون تحسن بشكل أفضل. صح. خصوصا بالنسبة لموضوع ملكية الأجانب، هذا القانون اللي لازم يخلوا له أولوية حتى يشتغلون عليه، حتى أما يقللون النسبة أو يلغوها تماما. يعني هذا ممكن يساهم إنه يساعد دخول رؤوس أموال أكثر للسوق، تنشط حجم التداول.
هو أصلا هذا القانون ليش تخلى، يعني شنو الفكرة منه كانت؟
أتوقع هو القانون نخلي هذا القانون حتى يحمي ملكية العراقيين، يكون العراقيين هم المسيطرين أو هم أصحاب القرار بالشركات العراقية، تكون هم الأغلبية بها. لكن هسه إحنا إذا نحكي على حجم التداول بالبورصة، فالاستثمار الأجنبي ممكن يدعم حجم التداول، ممكن يساهم الاستثمار الأجنبي بكل دول العالم. هو ممكن يعزز نشاط السوق، يعزز من حجم التداول، من نشاط وحيوية التداولات. فهذا الشيء تأثيره إيجابي موجود بكل البورصات، بورصة الإمارات اللي إحنا نريد كل العراقيين مهتمين حتى يتداولون بها، الإمارات عفوا السعودية والكويت وغيرها. فهذا القرار إذا سوينا حيكون بصالح الجميع إذا تم إلغاءه. عفوا.
أوكي. أيوه، هو تقول إنه أغلب دول المنطقة هي مطبق هذا القرار.
أكيد. أصلا يعني لاغيها، شايلين هذا المحدد هذا.
أوكي. إيه، أتصور يعني بالنسبة للأجانب، أنا إذا شركة، طبعا هي من المهم أن تكون عندنا شركات وطنية، بس شركات وطنية بمجالات محددة. مثلا عندنا أكيد شركة تصنع أسلحة، مثلا عندنا شركة مثلا تسوي أدوية. أوكي، هاي تبقى شركات وطنية ومهمة ولها مجالات استراتيجية يعني صحيح، بس هي مثلا شركة مال يعني مصرف، أو مثلا شركة مال مشروبات غازية يعني
أصلا مثلا إحنا بنسمع شركة إنه يدخل بها استثمار أجنبي، فهذا يعزز من مكانتها. وحتى كاسم العراق إنه تدخل استثمارات أجنبية، معناته إنه هذا البلد هو صار ثقة وصار أمان، إنه رؤوس الأموال تدخل بسهولة وممكن يعني تصير عندها استثمارات به. هذا يدل على إنه البلد مستقر وأرض قابلة للاستثمار.
خطوة حقيقية يعني من هيئة العراق إنه تسوي هيك شيء.
أكيد تناولها هذا الموضوع السيد فيصل بأكثر من لقاء تكلم عنه. لكن لحد الآن ما شفنا لحد الآن نتيجة للموضوع هذا أو أي تقدم بهذا الخصوص.
أوكي. أكو شغلات أنا بالمناسبة هو طرحها أنا كلش يعني جذبتني، لأن أكو هواية شغلات إحنا نشوفها سلبية بالسوق بس ودي أشوفها إيجابية. أوكي. مثلا موضوع أنه قال الأسهم 5%، يعني كل مجموع قيمة السوقية مال شركات مال الأسهم هي بس تمثل 5% من الناتج الإجمالي مال العراق، بينما مثلا غير دول 30-40 أو بأمريكا 170%.
أتوقع قصده إنه هذا الموضوع إنه هي devaluated، يعني قصدها إنه هي قصده إنه كلش يعني تحت القيمة اللي يستحقها هاي الأسهم، هذا القصد منها.
أي صحيح. أي. وأنه مو كل الشركات مدرجة يعني.
صح. يعني وهذا طبعا هو لو عندك البول مالتك او الخيارات الشركات الليستد وعندك عدد مستثمرين كبير وخيارات استثمار اكثر، حتشوف كلش اداء يختلف بهذا السوق.
اي يعني احنا نشوفه دائما نطرحها احنا بالبودكاست كفشي يعني سلبي، انه ماكو شركات هي مدرجه زين، او انه هذه مشكله اساسيه بالسوق. يعني هذا الشخص من يفوت من برا بالعكس يعني يشوفه انه فرصه. اوكي،
هو فرصه طبعا فرصه، لان يعني الوضع ما اذا تغير حتكون صعب المانج للبورتفوليو، اتوقع حيكون اصعب.
شلون؟
يعني اذا تغير الوضع انه الشركات قصده صارت سوري ما فهمت السؤال مالتك.
قصدي يعني انه اي هو يشوفه هذا الشيء اللي احنا نشوفه في شيء شوي سلبي، هو يشوفه كفرصه انه اوكي هذا معناته انه بعده هو سوق هسه بدايته. شايف؟
هو اكيد طبعا كل ما يكون السوق صغير حيكون بريدكتبل او قابل للتخمين او توقعات به.
صحيح. اي وهم
ايزي تو يعني حتى ما بدي احكي بالانجليزي. سهل انه تتابع الشركات الموجوده به. وهاي هم انا حكيتها باكثر من بودكاست، انه هو هذا شيء سلبي وايجابي بنفس الوقت. انه بريدكتبل حيكون انت قابل تتوقع الاسعار حركتها، تقدر سهوله تختار الشركات وين تروح وين تشتري. في حين اذا صار حجم التداول ضخم اكو ترندز حتكون او اتجاهات السوق صعب تخمينها، حتكون عدد الخيارات كلش كبيره، حتكون صعوبه اختيار وين تروح وين تخلي فلوسك. فكل ما يكون الصغير حتكون اكو اوبورتونيتي سهل واحد يخمنها او يتحكم بها ادارتها سهل.
وهم يعني هو the only ways يعني المجال الوحيد هو انه بالسنين الجايه احنا ما هنشوف شركات اقل مدرجه، المفروض او المنطق يقول انه احنا هنشوف شركات اكثر مدرجه. زين يعني هي كم شركه؟ هي 100 وشويه شركه. زين فهي مو عدد كبير حتى هسه نبدي نقل، لا بالعكس هو المنطق الشيء الوحيد انه بعد راح يزيد هذه الشركات المدرجه. فمن تزيد هاي الشركات المدرجه بالنهايه راح نشوف انه انه استثمار اكثر، ضخ اكثر.
ومو مهم يزيد، مهم يزيد وكواليتي ايضا، تكون نوع الشركات المدرجه تكون هي فعلا جاده بادراجها، يعني تكون ادراج حقيقي، نشوف اسهم، نشوف حجم تداول، نشوف بلاير جديد داخل السوق، هذا المهم. احنا ما نريد تدخل 50 شركه وتداولاتها 100,000 او 200,000، هاي الاشياء اللي تحسها وهميه.
ايوه، هم هو قال انه لان المستثمرين هم اغلبهم يعني يعرفون شنو الشركات اللي يستثمرون بها وعلى اي اساس يستثمرون. يعني احنا ما عندنا هوايه مثلا يعني بهيدج فاندز او كوانتيتيف تريدنج، يعني ناس هم خل هذا السهم صعد خلينا نبيع هذا السهم، لا يعني هم ناس مثلا اتصور الجروبات مال واتساب اوكي، او مثلا هم اعضاء مجالس اداره الى اخره، ذول يستثمرون، فالقرارات مالتهم تتبع داتا او تتبع يعني فاندمنتالز بالشركات هاي اللي يستثمرون
موستلي. يعني اكثر عن هذا الشيء يعتمدون على الداتا واداره الشركات. هذا معظم اللوكل او المستثمرين المحليين اللي يبنوا عليه قراراتهم بناء على اداء الشركات.
وهذا لين سوقنا صغير، احنا من سوقنا يكبر لا الناس راح تبدي يعني تباوع تسوي تكنيكال اناليسيس وهيك شغلات.
صحيح، حتى يتبعون الترند او حركه السوق. هذا ترند، هاي مو من عندي الكلمه، يعني هذا المصطلح الدارج عند بالتكنيكال او التحليل الفني، انه من يصير اتجاه السوق ارتفاع تكون هو يقدرون يسوون على ايزي او اسهل، حتكون هم يحللون السوق واتجاهاته، يشوفون نقاط الدعم والقوه والمقاومه ونقاط الدخول والخروج، وتسهل يعني يكون اسهل تحديدها من يكون حجم التداول اعلى.
اي فيصير شويه يعني دوخ التداول بالسوق يعني.
وهذا الصحيح، يعني وهذا السوق الحقيقي.
اي اوكي، بس هو احنا هو يشوف يقول اي كل شيء انا دا اخذ سوق بعد يعني خلينا نقول بعد بيبي.
صح بالضبط، هو هذا الشيء، وهذا اللي يخلي يعتبر الاسواق الفرونتير او الاسواق الناشئه حتكون هي كلش اتراكت او جذابه بالنسبه للمستثمرين الاجانب، لان هي هاي ميزاتها، انه حجم التداول قليله، اسعار هي تحت قيمتها المستحقه، وسهوله التنبؤ بحركه السوق، او ممكن انت الفند مالتك او المبلغ اللي تحوله اللي هو ممكن لا شيء بالبورصات المتقدمه، لكن انت من تخلي بهذا البورصه ممكن يحركها وتكون انت لاعب اساسي بالسوق.
اي فبالعكس يعني ايجابيه وتفاؤل وسيعود العراق الى الصداره يعني. استمر ارجوك يعني ليش نضل احنا نحكي بالعكس السوق هسه زين، احنا خلينا نستغل هاي الفتره، السوق بعدها هسه ينشا يتطور والقادم افضل ان شاء الله.
هذا الصح. احنا كنا نحكي بفتره كورونا او هاي ابسط شيء الازمه اللي فاتت، يعني الأغلبية كانوا خايفين، كان أكو بانيك كلش كبير، هواي دخلوا لي يسألوني أنا هسه شو أسوي، أبيع هسه وأشتري بعدين من ينزل أكثر. كانت أكو قرارات هواي مو صحيحة، لأن ما حد بس ولا أني ولا أي أحد ممكن كان حتى بأي دولة بالعالم كان يقدر يخمن الوضع وين رايح.
وبالأخص هسه يعني
لا هسه أو يعني بفترة الأزمة تحديدا، من تكون أنت تحت الضغط أو تحت الأزمة، خلال الأزمة أنت صعب تفكر أنت بهذه اللحظة. فأنت إذا عندك قرار أو أنت خطة مسوية، حتى المضارب اللي هو يشتري الغرض البيع، المفروض يكون عندك أنت جول إنه أنا أشتري هذا السهم، من يوصل هاي هذا الرقم أنا أبيع. إذا صارت انقلبت الدنيا، أي قرار، أي صار تسونامي، صار أي مشكلة، المفروض أنت ما تغير هذا قرارك. بالعكس، في حال نزل حتكون هاي فرصة، ونزل بشكل كبير، هاي فرصة شراء. أنا يجون علي أقول لهم لا، مو مال بيع هسه، هذا القرار البيع هسه مو صحيح أبد، هذا السوق هسه ما الشراء، خلي يطلع حجم التداول قليل لكن أسعار ما تنخفض بشكل كبير.
اوكي. وهاي الازمه شلون صارت، شلون تفاعل السوق كان وياها، ايران اسرائيل الى اخره؟
صار انخفاض بحجم التداول يمكن بجلسه او جلستين فقط، او جلسه واحده على اكثر، لكن بعدها صار اكو ريكفري او تحسن السوق بشكل غريب. حجم التداول شفته كلش صعد من يعني بالايام العاديه كان يوصل مليار وهيك، وصل 1,900,000، وجلسه البارحه كان وصل 2.5 تقريبا، 2.5 مليون دينار تداولت.
شنو رايك كان يعني شخصيا انه واحد بديش فتره يشتري او ما يشتري ووقف له؟
هو شوف، احنا هاي المشكله اتوقع ما انا قالتها، يعني ما اتذكر من واحد من الخبراء اتكلم يقول هذا السوق الوحيد اللي الناس تشتري تبيع به من السوق ينزل، وتبدي تشتري من السوق يصعد.
اوكي.
يعني الحاله معكوسه، اللي انت بالعكس، يعني انت من اسوي تخفيضات الناس تبدي تبيع، ومن اسوي
تخفيضات بوقت الازمات.
اي يعني السعر مثل احنا نسميها بلاك فرايداي بالبورصه، لا الناس تبدي تبيع بدل ما انه تشتري. حال التصرفات تكون مو منطقيه وعكسيه. الرياكشن او رده الفعل المستثمرين حتكون عكسيه بسبب البانيك او بسبب الذعر، من تكون الامور اسوء. خصوصا احنا قلت لك ماشيين هوايه تجارب، وهاي التجارب المارين بيها المفروض تكون عندنا، تعطينا بالعكس، تعطينا خبره انه شلون نتعامل وياها بعيدا عن التخوف. نلتزم بالخطه مالتي، وهي أزمة حتعدي حالها الأزمات الهواية اللي شايفيها إحنا متمرسين بيها.
هو في رند قريب
بالضبط.
مثل ما يقول كان انه طبعا هي من تنزل الاسهم الكل همين راح يبيع لين اوكي ليش الباقيين يبيعون خليه يبيع انا وياه كذا
يعني
شيء
تحسبا للأسوأ.
اي تحسبا للأسوأ.
بس هسه من ارتفاع بدأت الناس تشتري، لكن تلاحظ انه حجم التداول بدا يصعد ارتفاع. البارحه كان رغم انه مرتفع السوق
اللي هو بعد وقف اطلاق النار
بالضبط رأسا ارتفاع صار ريكفري، رغم انه هي بالليل كانت الاوضاع مو زينه، كانت القصف صاير على محطه حتى صار بالعراق اصلا، لكن مع ذلك ويا الصبح الاخبار تغيرت والسيناريو كله صار بالعكس.
اوكي، فالدرس من هذا انه ابقى متحفظ باسهمك،
محتفظ بيها ودائما انا اقولها، بس هذا المشكله انه احنا دائما نقول خليك متماسك لا تخاف. يعني هاي الشغلات الصفات عكس الصفات البشريه اللي هي طبيعيه، خصوصا اللي عندهم عائله يقول لك انا اخلي كاس جو ايدي ما اعرف الوضع ايش حيصير، والسوشيال ميديا والاخبار كلها تبين انه حصير كارثه نوويه وغيرها وتسربات اشعاعيه وشون تتخذ التحوطات بهاي الفترة. فطبيعي هذا تصرف طبيعي من الناس انه حيتصرفون بعاطفة وممكن يبيعون بسبب الذعر، لكن لازم مع ذلك واحد قدر الامكان قد ما انت تقدر تحكم اعصابك قد ما انت حتحافظ على فلوسك وتقدر تستثمرها اكثر بشكل اصح. فهاي هذا الكي يعني بصراحة، هذا المفتاح للاستثمار الناجح انه انت تقدر تتحكم باعصابك
صح
بهاي الفترات.
اتصور لذلك يقولون عن انجح المستثمرين انهم عاده يكونون يعني سايكوباتس او هيك.
صحيح كلش اتفق فعلا سايكوباث، يعني ماكو واحد يعني اكثر من يقول لك عندما تسد دماء بالشوارع ناس بالشارع تموت وانت تروح تشتري اسهم يعني. وانا فعلا كمستثمرين يعني حكوا لي هالفتره بحث يقولوا لي يعني كل شغله ما تنحكي يتمنون الوضع يصير اسوء حتى الاسهم تنزل.
اوكي
يعني وصلنا مرحله، فهذا اكيد شيء احنا
اريد اتعرف على هذول الناس ممكن نستضيفهم. شكرا جزيلا ست مارة.
انا اشكرك.
ممنونين.